Good morning, and welcome to our Bible study for this morning at Christ the King Lutheran Church. We're going to be looking mainly focused on Luke chapter 4 today. So if you want to open up on Luke chapter 4, we will start at Jesus' proclamation of the fulfillment of Isaiah, where the Spirit of the Lord is on me. And he said, today this prophecy has been fulfilled in your hearing. What is interesting about this is one of the miracles that takes place indirectly, I guess you might want to say. It begins in chapter 4, verse 24. Jesus says, I tell you the truth, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. Again, Christ is saying he's the Messiah through the fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah. And the people at Nazareth have known Jesus as a child. And, you know, it's one of those things in which people have a hard time making an adjustment to see someone in a different way. I know an example of this is I vicared in Florida, in Eustis, back in 1985, 86. And they had come some vacancies after Pastor Gurkin, who was my supervising pastor, retired. And they asked, after he had retired, if I'd be interested in a call down there. And I, at the moment, because it was kind of young, declined my name for the call list because I just didn't know if the church would be willing to accept a transition from seeing me as a vicar, as someone who was an intern, and now to be a leader as a pastor. And I thought that that might be a hard transition to make. When you go into a church as a vicar, most of the time the idea is you're there to be trained not just by the pastor, but also by congregational members. When you're a pastor, and now you are there to train the congregation, it's a whole different change of pace. Its roles are altered, and for that reason I didn't think it would be good until some more years had passed that I would be considered as a good pastor for the church there in Florida. And this is where I think Jesus still struggles with this, is that they saw him as a child, and now he's saying he's the Messiah, and so they just can't take this very easily. They think he's the carpenter's son. They don't understand how this is all coming together. And what they want to do, let's pick it up now after Jesus says in John chapter 4, verse 24, I tell you the truth, he continued, no prophet is acceptable in his hometown. I assure you that there were many widows in Israel's times when the sky was shut for 3 weeks and a half, 3 years and a half, and there was severe famine. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them but a widow in Zarephath in the region of Sidon. I continued to read on. And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elijah the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. And here's the reaction, verse 28. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They were like, no, this cannot be possible. This Jesus is just a lowly carpenter's son. No way can he be the Messiah. So in verse 29, they got up, drove him out of the town, and took him to the brow of the hill in which the town was built in order to throw him down the cliff. What this means is that they were planning to stone him. The penalty for blasphemy is stoning. The first thing you do when you stone someone is you take him to a cliff and you push him over, and hopefully the fall will kind of make him unconscious and a little stunned, and then you finish the job with a whole bunch of stones. So the intent here is to kill Jesus for the sin of blasphemy. And notice what happens. Verse 30. He walked right through the crowd and went on his way. Luke doesn't go much into detail of how this crowd was frozen. Isn't it fascinating, though, that the crowd has a change take place? They're ready for blood, and now they can't move. And Jesus just walks through. Any response of why this crowd was frozen? Why were they not able to lift up and finish the job? Why didn't they go through and push him over the cliff? What stopped him and why? Any responses out there? What stopped him and why? Luke chapter 4:30, we're looking at the discussion of why the crowd did not finish his job of pushing Jesus over the cliff, and why. I'm looking for responses. I'm not seeing anything. Anybody in the class with me today? We have Cecilia, Kurt, and Allison. Anybody want to share of what stopped them? What stopped them from pushing Jesus over the cliff?
It wasn't his time.
It wasn't his time, nor was it his way. Time and method. This was just early in the ministry. Jesus had another 3 years of public ministry. This is very early. So no, it wasn't his time. And B, how was Christ determined to die by his Father? Was it through stoning? Crucifixion. So Jesus didn't even worry. Maybe you might remember that story in Mark chapter, I think it's 4, maybe later, where Jesus is in this boat and the winds pick up and the waves are billowing over the boat and the disciples are, bailing water like crazy. And what's Jesus doing? Anybody remember the story? What's Jesus?
Sleeping.
He's sleeping. Jesus is sleeping while all the other disciples are bailing water like crazy. Why do you think Jesus is willing to sleep through the storm? I mean, he's a man. You don't want to take away his humanity. He's a man. Why is Jesus able to sleep through that storm? Because he's Jesus. That's the answer, right? Again, we go back to Luke chapter 4. I'm just trying to put these two together. Let's connect the dots. Why was Jesus not worried about that storm? He knew what? That the disciples didn't know. What did he know that the disciples did not know?
He had power over storms.
He had power over storms, but he also knew he wasn't going to die that way. Why is he going to worry about it? I'm not dying. And so he jumps the disciples in the story for lack of faith, right? Jesus gets upset with the disciples. What reason do you think Jesus has to be upset with the disciples? This is a real tough one, I think, if anybody can get that one. I mean, he jumps them for not having faith. How come he does that? And what grounds does he have to jump them for no faith? Oh, Ray Hinton and Kelly, yeah, Jesus slept because he knew the Father's will for him. Very good. And Kurt had said the same. It was not meant for him to die in the storm. So he's going to sleep right through it. So what was the problem with the disciples? Who was their leader? Who was their leader in this whole thing? Who's the leader? Jesus is the leader. It's kind of like the children's sermon question, right? It's always got to be Jesus. So yeah, Jesus is the leader. And so the question is, if the leader is not panicking, why should the followers? That's what they jump Jesus. Don't you care that we die? And Jesus, hey, if I'm not panicking here, why are you guys panicking? That's one thing you really want in your leaderships for people in the midst of a storm. You want someone that's going to be cool, calm, collective. Because when the moment your leader starts panicking, then you lose all sorts of control. So Jesus knew here that it was not his time. Due to the fact it was not his time, these people who wish to push him over the hill are frozen. They can't do the job they wanted to. This just wasn't the time nor the way that Jesus was meant to die. And so Jesus I would have loved to see the scene. I would have loved to see how that played out. How you got this angry mob, and all of a sudden, they're frozen. Would have been an interesting phenomenon to witness. Jesus walks away. He does know that Nazareth's not going to be the place he's going to set up camp. He's not welcome there. People aren't going to accept his ministry there. They're just not going to make that transition from a vicar to a pastor or from a carpenter's son to the Messiah. So Jesus moves his base center to another town. Trivia question for you today. What became the base center for the ministry of Christ? What city?
Capernaum.
Capernaum. Oh, we've got a student in here. Cecilia answers Capernaum. And that's exactly where we see verse 31 in Luke chapter 4. Where does Jesus go? Capernaum. And this became his base. Then Jesus went down to Capernaum, a town in Galilee, and on the Sabbath began to teach the people. They were amazed at his teaching because his message had authority. See the different reaction of the crowd. The town of Nazareth, even though Jesus probably did teach with authority, was not able to accept this kid as their Messiah. Capernaum, who never really knew Jesus as a child, is all ready to listen to him due to the fact he teaches with authority. So, in 33, in the synagogue there was a man possessed by a demon, an evil spirit. He cried out at the top of his voice, "Ha! What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." And Jesus tells the demon to be quiet. Is the demon saying anything wrong? Is the demon making an accurate statement of truth? That Jesus is the Holy One of God?
Yep.
Yes. So what's the problem here, class of 4? How come Jesus tells someone who speaks the truth to shut up? I mean, it's a command. I mean, basically, they say it nicely in the translation, be quiet, but it's pretty like, shut up. Why does Jesus shut up this truth?
People aren't ready for it yet.
People are not ready. You can't handle the truth.
Exactly.
That's from A Few Good Men, right?
Yep.
Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth. And in a way, this is a correct answer. The crowd's not ready to handle the truth. This is very early in the ministry. And you know, the devil's got nothing good up his sleeve. So he's trying to derail the ministry of Christ immediately before it even begins. And how is this confession an attempt to derail the ministry of Christ? Anybody want to take a stand at that? Of how does the devil encourage one of his workers to make a statement of truth about Jesus? How is this an action of derailment? Well,
Will people believe the crazy guy?
will people believe the crazy guy?
Yeah, like the guy, what if he's the town crazy that is saying Jesus is God?
Oh.
And,
Okay. And that's yeah. I mean, you make this statement. I can see where you're coming up with, Allison. If a possessed man tells the truth will be undermined like a credibility from Kelly. What are the people envisioning for the Messiah? What are they envisioning at this time? What kind of Messiah are they looking for? A political one or a spiritual one? Yeah, and Jesus isn't ready for people to be misled. And so if these demons get out there and start publicizing Christ as the Messiah and control the agenda, that's the whole thing about politics, right? Control the agenda. You control the agenda, you control the people. If they can control the agenda of what the Messiah is to be, they can hopefully control the people and get this whole thing derailed before it even begins. Jesus didn't want these people to know about this Holy One of God, because now when we go in and say, hey, when are you going to take on those Romans? When are you going to declare peace on this earth? That's not what Jesus is coming to do. And the devil wishes, again, like I've mentioned, to derail the whole ministry of Christ from the get-go. So we've got Jesus telling the demon to be quiet, and then the demon is commanded to come out of him. Then the demon threw the man down before them all and came out without injuring him. Verse 36. All the people were amazed and said to each other, what is this teaching? With authority and power he gives orders to evil spirits and they come out. And the news about him spread throughout the surrounding area. So what question might you as a hearer or a witness to this scene may have asked? I mean, they are asking this question, what is this teaching? What's another question you may ask after you see this event? It's not here, but if you were a person witnessing the scene, you might not be tempted to ask, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And Jesus leaves the whole thing with an open question because, again, people just aren't ready for a true understanding of his position. If you listen to the message on Sunday for today, I brought that up with the women with the announcement that at the tomb they're all joyous about it. And yet they had heard the announcement even before this event. This is due to the fact that they had this situation and the knowledge that the Messiah was supposed to do this glorious overthrowing and welcoming of a kingdom on earth. And so when Jesus starts the announcement, he says, first, what's going to have to happen is the Son of Man has to be betrayed and turned over to the chief priests and Sadducees, and he will be lifted up and crucified and died, and third day rise again. At the very beginning of the announcement, Peter just wants to stop. He says, God forbid this doesn't go with the scheme of the Messiah. And so people really aren't going to understand this whole thing about what Jesus is and who Jesus is, until a little glimpse takes place at the resurrection. But the full, more comprehensive knowledge of Christ and his ministry takes place. Want to answer that question out there? When does it all fall together for the disciples? When does it all fall together? Because I'll have you look. Does it happen after the resurrection? I challenge that. Look at Acts chapter 1, verse 9. Again, the author of Acts is the same as the author of Luke. Luke writes Acts as well. So as Jesus is about to ascend into heaven, they ask in verse 6, what's the question?
Are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel?
They still don't get it. Acts 1:6. They still don't get it. Jesus doesn't really give them a solid answer. So if the clarity does not take place after the resurrection, when does the clarity take place? Pentecost. 50 days after the resurrection, and that's why they call Pentecost the birth of the Christian church. It's a major holiday for the church. We don't focus on Pentecost maybe as much as we should, but when you look at exactly what took place, it should be understood as a high holy day. It is a high holy day in the church calendar, but for the average layperson, it just seems to be one of those little festivals we just dismiss and not pay much attention to. One of the events that the churches have used over the course of time to make Pentecost special in the life of individuals is they've scheduled what rite to be celebrated on Pentecost. Trivia question again. Maybe some of you actually had this event happen in your life, that your church waited to do this for you until Pentecost. I know. Were you confirmed on Pentecost?
I don't recall.
It's been a long time ago.
It's been a long time ago. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. It is confirmation. Yeah. Confirmation, the 3 Sundays, well, there are 2 Sundays that churches will choose for confirmation. Some of them will like to choose Palm Sunday, for confirmation. Others will choose Pentecost. And still, I've seen other churches choose Reformation in October. And one of the reasons why they choose Reformation in October for confirmation. Have you ever heard about this one? Anybody know why some churches are like, We're not going to do it in May or in June with Pentecost, or like our church doing it in May. What's happening now? We don't even know when it's going to take place. What's the argument of why the church finds it important to do confirmation on Reformation Sunday? Have you heard any of the arguments? No.
So it's not graduation.
You got it, Allison. Good for you. Yeah, because we get this whole situation is that we get this graduation mentality in May. And so here we're confirming kids in this month that's associated with graduation, and subliminally it's delivering the wrong message. So they'd rather do it at the beginning of the education year when schools reopen, and the mentality of the whole thing is that, okay, we are starting more education, we are not finishing education. Interesting argument, isn't it? It's got some weight to it, due to the fact that there is no real definite time to celebrate confirmation. So when I do see churches celebrate confirmation or reformation, I get it. I think it might be something that all churches need to look at, due to the fact of what we associate with mentally due to the months. Month of May, we're done. Month of September, October, we're just beginning. So, kind of cool. Anything on that demonic spirit that you would like to... Oh, Sharon McDonald, my niece was confirmed at Reformation. So she's got a personal experience of Reformation confirmation. So I know there's a number of them that do. Thank you for sharing that, Sharon. Any questions on this little pericope of Luke chapter 4, 31 through 36? Popularity of Jesus is getting to be known. The news is spreading around. What time do I have?
7 minutes still.
7 minutes still. All right, because I left my watch at home. All right, so maybe we'll take a look at this next section and see if we can finish it up. Luke chapter 5, 38 through 44. Well, Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Simon. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and he asked Jesus to help her. So he bent over her and rebuked the fever. Let's take a pause there. Rebuke the fever. How do you rebuke a fever? What does this mean for Luke? Luke's a doctor, and he actually will use the phrase, Jesus rebukes the fever. So he says it's a metaphor. I think there's something more than just a metaphorical language here. That is personification. The fever becomes a person that can be rebuked. So what does this say about sickness in our world? Is there a power behind sickness that needs to be rebuked? And if there is a power behind sickness, why is it even there? Is there an actual kind of being behind sickness? Would we be sick if we'd never fall into sin?
No.
Nope. We'd never die, we'd never experience sickness, we'd never experience pain. And so Luke communicates with this message that there seems to be a demonic or an evil force with sickness that needs to be rebuked. Do you see how he puts this right next to the exorcism of the evil spirit? It seems like Luke's got kind of an agenda, a plan here. To say, hey, you reject the demon, you rebuke the demon, and now he moves on, and now understand this. We also need to be rebuking the spirits behind sickness. Yeah. Condemn it, told it to go away. Thank you, Mike Leeson. Hey, Mike Leeson, you were supposed to bring the donuts for us today. I don't know why they're not here. Oh, well, they are because I picked them up, but you can get them next Sunday, Mike. He rebukes this fever. And I'm going to go off a little tangent here, get on my soapbox, that we're going to talk about essential services. There's a lot of essential services being addressed right now about our physical needs. What are the essential services that our government is saying is essential? What is allowed to be open right now? What's out there that the government says that's an essential service? Tom Nemec. Seriously, Tom? Tom Nemec's from up in Indiana. He's watching me. I knew donuts would come up at some time. He's our custodian. He was our custodian of faith. He still is. But so that's who Tom Nemec is. Hey, Tom, I know you love your donuts too. So the aspect again, what are the essential businesses that our government says are important?
Gas stations.
Gas stations?
Food.
Food.
Grocery stores.
Grocery stores. Doctors. Hospitals. What does this all address? What does this address to the human being?
Physical needs.
Physical needs. The body. So the question I challenge our society and church and Christians to ask is the human being, what is a human being? What does it mean to be human? Does it mean just to have a body? Or to be a human means you have a body and a soul? What do you guys think? So, are we only just going to be concerned about the human body and really not truly, Carrie, don't understand how liquor stores are essential. Yes. Well, we're talking about the spirits now, right? Right, Carrie? So, spirit, soul. But when we want to talk about the human being, don't we need to talk about the whole encompassing entity of the human being? Not just Kelly Hinton, Home Depot knows essential too. They're just not talking about the body, but soul. I just don't, as a pastor, fully understand how we are not, as a church, really going out there and saying, look, the soul has essential ministries that need to be served too. So if we serve the soul as a church body, what can that, I may go over a little bit, what can that help in the whole process of this COVID-19 virus? We're going to serve the body, protect it, stay healthy. But what can serving the soul do for the individual during this COVID-19 crisis?
Gives them hope.
Gives them hope. What other things? Kurt?
Peace of mind.
Gives them peace. See, listen to that. Cecilia says gives peace. Allison says gives hope. And Kurt's been in at every staff meeting saying about this as well. It removes fear. And I think our country needs a lot of that ministry right now. And the only way you got to remove fear is address the soul, not the body. So, the church is an essential ministry unless you consider the human being only body and not soul. The church needs to be out there promoting the gospel at a time like this to give hope, to give peace, to reduce the fear, so that we can stay functional as human beings and not dysfunctional. We're already dysfunctional because of sin. And like Michael Easton says, yeah, the soul, that's what sets us apart from animals. I just don't understand why we're not hearing that the soul needs to be addressed. If anything, it kind of communicates a little message about our country, right? That we're losing the whole idea about any necessary need to address the human soul or a need for this relationship between God and man. People are running out there scared of dying. Scared of dying. And that's because their soul is not being fed. You get the soul fed, I think the fear of the COVID-19 will drop a little bit, and the fear of dying will also drop. Let's rebuke these evil spirits, and let's serve our human soul and not just the body. So we are at 10 o'clock. Next week, I'm going to really raise the bar. We're going to go for 50 minutes because now we can go up to 10 in the church. So we'll be doing it to give me, I believe, an extra more time to do 50. We're going to talk about one of the most controversial issues happening in our church today. Virtual reality communion. Yeah. We'll be sending you some stuff out this week so you can... I'm going there. I'm going to be sending you some stuff out this week so you can kind of read it for yourself before I get started, process your thoughts, get your questions down about this virtual reality communion. Our church body has come out on some things. Commission Theology, Church Relations has made a statement on it. Other churches are practicing it. So we'll look at it, and if you're interested in my opinion, I'm going to spend some time looking at scriptures with you, send that information out for you to look at so you can kind of prepare your thoughts and get your questions as we address it. And we're going to do a 50-minute, I don't even know if we'll get it done in the 50 minutes, but we'll get it hopefully done in 2 Sundays. And pray. We'll be back live on the first Sunday of May, God willing. Us this morning, I'm going to go take care of some people's souls now for the next 2 hours, feeding them the wonderful body and blood of our Christ, to give them that hope, that peace, that comfort, and to reduce their fears. Thanks for joining us. See you later.